What celebrity did bad things but everyone forgot what they did because they're famous? Vince Neil of Motley Crue drove drunk and killed one of his very good friends and gave the two people in the other car very bad injuries and brain damage. He also had other DUIs after this. But hey, everybody loves a good party song, and now he has a famous liquor brand. Floyd Mayweather beats his wife with hands that are registered as lethal weapons in front of his children. But because he wins, nobody cares. Jimmy Superfly Snuka killed his girlfriend and got inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame. Kurt Cobain's mother regularly goes on talk shows and interviews where she talks about how supportive she was of Kurt and how she knew how famous he would become from the moment she heard his music. Yup. It's the same mom that abused Kurt and kicked him out multiple times, making him live at his grandparents' friends and sometimes, not confirmed, sleep under a bridge. R. Kelly married Aaliyah when she was 15 years old in the mid-90s, and yet it took like 2 decades for people to start boycotting him as a sexual predator. He was still making songs with Beyonce and Lady Gaga etc. for a long time. Rick James kidnapped 2 women with his wife while on separate crack binges. Vince Neil was driving drunk and caused a crash that killed his passenger. Ted Nugent pooped his pants to dodge the draft and has a song called Jailbait, which ends with him pleading with an officer not to arrest him and instead share a 13-year-old. Johnny Cash walked out on his wife and kids saying that his career was more important to him than they were. Then went on to eventually settle down with June Carter and start a whole new family while still ignoring the kids he already had. Boy Georgie beat a guy with a metal chain after cuffing him to a radiator. Should make for an interesting sequence in his forthcoming biopic. Steven Tyler became the guardian for a 16-year-old he was dating when he was 25 so he could bring her on tour. Knocked her up too. Piers Morgan was the editor of the Daily Mirror during the Iraq War. Published photos that he knew were fake of American and British troops abusing Iraqi prisoners. He was fired but somehow managed to make a successful media career out of it. George Wallace, the infamous pro-segregation governor of Alabama in the 60s, did not inform his wife that her doctor diagnosed her with cancer. Doctors during this time often told patients' relatives of their cancer diagnosis instead of the patient, especially if the patient was female. The reason was that she was running for governor as a surrogate for him since he had reached his term limits, and he thought that the diagnosis would negatively affect her chances of winning. She ended up finding out about it 4 years later during a visit to a gynecologist. But unfortunately the cancer had progressed to the point that she died from it 3 years after learning that she had cancer and that her husband had known about it. He ended up successfully getting the term limits repealed and went on to serve a few more terms as governor. People forget about this, I'm assuming, because of all of the other poopty things he did. Edit, her name was Laleen Wallace. For those interested. Cole Malone got a 13 years old pregnant and refused to take care of that child. Drake seems to be ignored for grooming a young underage fan, at age 14, into being his girlfriend until she recently turned 18 this year. And now he's even, supposedly, doing it to the young actress. Gwyneth Paltrow's a con artist and manages her MLM. As well as recommending women treat their illness by putting rocks up their vagina and steaming their privates, causing harm to people. You can say she's an idiot. Or just that she's a sociopath that loves making money off hurting other people. Steven Tyler was a serial rapist in the 70s and 80s. Now he's an old woman. In my country there is a TV host that killed several people in a car accident. Twice. It was his fault both times. You can still see him on TV. I mean, it seems to most that Drake is actively grooming young girls, but it seems to be forgotten as soon as new evidence surfaces. Emma Roberts beat the poop out of her then boyfriend Evan Peters. Then continued to co-star in the same show as him. There's a soccer player in Brazil who killed his wife, quartered her body and gave it to dogs eat, to make it harder to police found out. He went to jail for a few years and now he is paying again and making tons of money again like nothing happened. Edit. Okay, he is not making a ton of money. What I meant is that he's probably gonna have a pretty comfortable life and have his career back. Also, the woman wasn't his wife. It was his mistress, but they have a children together and still. She was a person. His name is Bruno Fernandes de Souza. Creed Bratton has been a leader and a follower of numerous cults. There was that time James Franco tried to frick a teenager. After she posted the exchange on social media of her telling him how old she was and him not caring and still wanting to see her. All he had to do was go on a few morning talk shows a couple days later and say, "You don't always know who you're talking to online." And everyone instantly forgot about it. He framed it like he was the one who was deceived and people just let it slide, even though that clearly wasn't the case. Dr. Dre beat a reporter, D. Barnes, savagely for writing a negative story on him. Or one he perceived as negative. I don't know. After Dr. Dre tried to throw her down the stairs and failed. He began kicking her in the ribs and hands. She escaped and ran into the women's restroom. Dr. Dre followed her and grabbed her from behind by the hair again and proceeded to punch her in the back of the head. He and Eminem would go on to joke about it as the man who slapped D. Barnes. Dre produced and is featured in rapper Eminem's song Guilty Conscience, in which Eminem references the incident as a humorous put down. Dre reportedly fell out of his chair laughing at it. Can we have a reverse thread? Which celebrity has a clean background? Charlie Sheen once had unprotected hanky-panky with his girlfriends, plural, when he has HIV. Coco Chanel was an artsy. Tyler Tequila is an artsy. And Edic has sexually assaulted people an absurd amount of times and also got Phil Hartman's wife back into drugs, which led to her murdering Hartman in an intoxicated state. You would think he would have been ruined in the Me Too movement. But apparently we pass it off like that's classic and Edic. Edit. To those saying and Edic doesn't really get a pass because everyone hates him. He's not in prison, which is where anyone else would end up for doing half the things he did. So I'd call that a huge pass. Will Smith was in YouTube Rewind 2018. Mr. Mossaby from Sweet Life of Zack and Cody killed someone in a drunk driving accident. Edit. Phil Lewis is unlike many of the others on this thread in that he was sincerely remorseful for his actions. The comedy troupe that he created helped spread awareness of the dangers of drunk and reckless driving. And that helped play a role in his reduced sentence. People can change with reflection, introspection, and genuine remorse for their wrongdoings. And he seems like a very good representation of that. Rick James. He and his girlfriend literally kidnapped someone and burned them with their crack pipe and sexually assisted her. But people just want to go Rick James bitch. Edit. Sexually assaulted not assisted, haha.
Hi there. Look, if you enjoyed the video, well, why not go ahead and hit that like and subscribe to Reddit Stories. In fact, if you want to see even more responses to this thread, well then, take a look. There's the link in the description below. And remember, show some love to those authors while you're there. And I look forward to seeing you next time.